We are 71 days away from the election, which means voters are deciding or have already decided on which candidate they're going to vote for. And this can come in many different factors, such as the likabilityness of that candidate, or perhaps their party values of that candidate. But I think what voters really do care about ultimately is what that candidate's policies are going to be. Well, at this point in time, the candidate should answer what their policies are, right? Policies like, and I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, Trump's mass deportation zero tolerance plan. JD Vance was asked about the zero tolerance mass deportation plan and whether or not this would separate mixed status families, and it was really hard to get a clear answer from him. Here's a clip of him answering it.
Into the country in the first place, and this is very
They're
important.
able to
about
process them more
deportations.
efficiently, but Greg Abbott's not setting them to other
Kristen,
states.
I don't want a border czar
just-
who makes it more efficient for illegal immigrants to come into this
to
country.
this
That's why we
question-
have the problem that we have.
Senator, to this question, because so many people want to know the answer to this, will families be separated under your mass deportation policy?
I think that families are currently being separated, and you're certainly going to have to deport some people in this country. Now, I think you
So that's
start
a
with
yes?
I think you start with the most violent criminals in our country. Those people need to be deported. That's where you focus federal resources. I think you, of course, have a number of children who are currently living with drug cartel members, not actually their families. We need to, of course, find their families and get them back to their families. But it's very interesting here because what Kamala Harris says is that Donald Trump wants to separate families. Kamala Harris's policies have led to thousands upon thousands of migrant children living with sex traffickers and drug cartels.
well-
that is the consequence of her policies.
But there's not a
Some of them are
policy to
even missing.
separate families. There's not a policy to separate families.
Oh, if you know that your policies will lead to family separation, you don't get to claim. Kristen, this is important.
wait, hold on.
Kamala Harris
Hold on.
cannot claim that she doesn't know that her policies
under
are
the-
leading to family separation. They are, and everybody knows it, and she has to take responsibility for that. That's what real leadership is.
There are some families who have been separated, as you say, some because their parents are criminals. But of course, under the Trump administration, there was a zero tolerance policy, which is an actual policy. But let's move on.
No, please,
because
can
we're
I
running
just
out
make
of
this point,
time.
Kristen, because this is so important.
We are running out of time,
There was a
Senator.
zero, I'll give you more time. There was a zero
Okay.
zero tolerance policy during the Trump administration, and that led to less family separation than under Kamala Harris's border policies. That's what's so striking about this. Actually enforcing our border is the most humane thing for children and certainly for American citizens.
But I don't hear you denying that families will be separated. Let's move on to something that Donald Trump said.
Okay, yeah, JD Vance completely dodged that question, but maybe it's because it's Trump's policy, and JD Vance didn't know how to answer Trump's questions. Luckily, we do have a clip of Trump being asked the exact same question, so maybe we'll have a better understanding of whether or not families of mixed status will be separated or not.
We're going to have to deport.
If you're trying to deport millions of people, that would perhaps include mixed families. Will you separate families to get to those goals?
Provisions will be made, but we have to get the criminals out. We have murderers in our country. They just walk in. We have over 20 million people, in my opinion, over 20 million people came in. And the number is growing every single day. And they're coming out from prisons, and they're coming out as gang members and murderers, and we have to get them out. Dwight Eisenhower, who was a moderate person, was very strong on the border, and he deported hundreds of thousands, even I think he deported maybe millions of people. I'll get the numbers. But Dwight Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, was a big believer in not allowing people into the country to do damage and commit crime. And I would say he was a somewhat moderate man. And I think I'm somewhat moderate too in a certain way. And one thing I will have, we're going to have a very strong border, and we're not going to let mass murderers and terrorists and all of these people pour into our country. We have massive numbers of people coming from Venezuela and other countries from jails. Their jail populations are way down. Their mental institution populations are way down. They're living happily in the United States of America. We're not going to stand for it.
Girl, what? JD Vance and Donald Trump dodging questions about whether families of mixed status households are going to be deported or not pretty much answers the question. This mass deportation policy is going to affect 1 out of 25 households in the United States. Now, I would like to share with you guys an article that I read this morning about one of the families that would be affected by this mass deportation plan. Here's an article by NBC News covering one of the families that would be affected by this policy. Rosa, Sanchez, 34, lives in Phoenix with her American citizen husband and U.S.-born children. Sanchez said that Trump's sweeping deportation proposal is threatening for her mixed family status. Sanchez has been living in the country for 23 years, except for 2 weeks when she returned to Mexico to fix her immigration status. But she re-entered the U.S. when drug cartel members began pursuing her, sending her texts telling her that she would be his wife soon, all signs that she was in danger of being kidnapped. A mother of 6, including a daughter who is a cancer survivor, Sanchez now has protection under Deferred Action for Children Arrivals, which is DACA. She and her husband operate a nonprofit organization, MIHUG, that they started to help parents with special needs children. Sanchez said that she and her husband haven't made any cognizant plan if Trump is elected, and she is deported because it's not an option for us. Although she is DACA, Trump previously tried to end it and barred new applications from the program. And she continues on to say that my 13-year-old, she lost her eye when she was 9 months old. She has prosthetics, she said. 9 weeks ago, Sanchez said her daughter called her because she had her eye come out as she walked to the bathroom in a school hallway. She needed her mother's help putting it back in. I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm in Mexico and these things happen, Sanchez said. Sanchez's husband, Evert Sanchez, said their family provides support in many ways to the community and to other families with cancer. He also does pro bono counseling for people with small businesses. Trump's mass deportation policy is only going to harm families like the Sanchez's. The policy is not in the interest of the American people, as Trump and his party claims it is. It only divides and harms marginalized voices.